AI makes everything feel very intense or heightened. All of a sudden, we've got these new superpowers, but we still don't really quite know how to use it. Transforming people from gatekeepers to be architects. I don't own user research. I architect user research principles and standards so that everyone can do great user research regardless of who's doing it. Because in some ways, AI is like a brilliant but clueless new member of your team.
In this podcast, you said AI is done. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Kene Anoliefo. Kene has led product and design at some of the most iconic companies in tech, like Google, Spotify, and Netflix. And she's also founded and grown her own business, Herd. She's known for helping teams thrive in the AI era by transforming how organizations capture and structure their institutional knowledge. So both people and AI tools can produce consistently high-quality work. Kene, welcome to Product in Practice.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Before we dive into today's episode, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Like, what have you been up to, and when did this interest in AI kind of come up?
Yeah, so I'll start from the beginning. And I think I'm a product person through and through. So I've spent most of my career either building products or building products for product teams as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So the first phase of my career, as you mentioned, I was leading product teams at big companies like Spotify and Netflix. I also did an early stage startup where I was like the first PM. And at the time, it was a small real estate technology startup called Compass. And it's now like a really big, massively successful public company. So I've had the opportunity to just cut my teeth building product at lots of different places. And I started my first company, Herd, about 3 years ago. And Herd helps product and marketing and research teams get customer feedback fast by using AI to moderate user interviews. And so as we were starting to see some of the first big breakthroughs in LLMs, I said, how could we apply this to one of the biggest bottlenecks in the product discovery lifecycle, which is getting customer feedback. And so we train AI to help you with all these different user research tasks, like writing the research study, to actually moderating the interview with your customers in voice, video, or chat, and then synthesizing all of the data and insights and giving it to you so that you don't have to code or tag any transcripts manually. And that's used by some great teams across the industry, like Ritual and Miro and Retool. And I'm also working on something new now that's, again, at the intersection of product and AI, and just so inspired by all of the ways that we can continue to transform the way we build product, because it was mostly the same for most of my career, and in the last 6 to 9 months everything is different, and it's such an exciting time to be building.
And it's changing at such an incredible pace as well. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is basically, as I was prepping the show, I reached out to our good friend Ravi Mehta, and I said, hey, do you have anybody you want to recommend for this show? And he instantly said, you need to speak to this lady whom I just saw on stage at this product event in San Diego. And apparently it was like the hit of the show. And he was like, it was great. You should get this person. I was like, who are you talking about? Who is this person? And it wasn't like a name I had heard before, you know, and I was like super intrigued. And he said, and he introduced us, and I hadn't seen, I actually don't know if there's a video of you speaking on stage at this San Diego event yet online, but the way Ravi talked about it, I was like, yeah, I need to get this person on the show.
Shout out to Ravi.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for gassing me up.
And one of the reasons he suggested you was how what you showed when you were at this product conference was very hands-on and obviously very AI-centric. So what kind of, drove your interest to this extent in AI? Like, you talked about starting this company 3 years ago, already looking into, I feel like also 3 years ago, people weren't as fluent in AI or conscious about like all the possibilities of AI. So from that perspective, maybe you were kind of early on that curve.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
You always feel late in
Why
AI,
not?
but yeah, sure, I'll take it.
And then, where does this come from?
Well, I already had a base level of like fluency and comfort working at companies like Spotify and Netflix, which are obviously known for how they build AI and ML into their
Because like recommendation engines, stuff like that?
exactly
Okay.
recommendation engines. Just even at Netflix, it's not just on the consumer side of the business, but also the supply side, to the production side of business. So those were some of the companies that were like first movers into our entire experience is powered by ML, which is now like, you know, a domain within broader artificial intelligence. But I think in the early stages when we were just starting to scratch the surface of what LLMs could do, I was just interested in applying it to every single aspect of what I was doing and every single aspect of the craft of building product. And Herd came to me and to my co-founder partly because we were like, it takes a long time to like talk to people, but it's also really important to talk to people and to learn about them. So is there some way to scale it? And now you have this technology where you can actually, you know, have directed conversations, but kind of like outsource that to an AI. And it can be conversational, but it can still be aligned in your guardrails. So I think it was really just saying in the early days, how do I take this now that it's so usable and try to apply it to everything that I do?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Do you feel like you had an advantage or an edge as opposed to like the rest of the PM talent because you were at companies like Spotify and Netflix before from an AI perspective?
You know, in some ways, I've taken some classes, you know, when I was in undergrad and grad school around AI and ML, and of course, working on these products and working amongst people who, you know, are really well versed in this technology gives you a baseline fluency. But I would say a lot of it was really just the mindset. Like I didn't feel intimidated by it because I'd been around it for quite some time. And even though I'm not a technical person who spent, you know, years and years doing AI or ML research, I know how to read the papers. I know how to understand the technology.
Yeah.
I know how to ask the right questions. I'm not afraid to say, like, I don't get what you're saying. Could
To be fair, you
explain
don't,
that to me
like,
in
to
a
be fair,
different way?
you don't really need to know how to read the papers now. You could give the paper to, you know, ChatGPT and get it to. Do you know what I mean?
True that. So I think a lot of it is the mindset where some people feel intimidated by it and think they need to be invited to sit at the table and have the conversation. And I just never felt that way, partly because I was always there. But it's a mindset that I think anyone could have today. You know, you don't need to have worked at those types of companies or have that type of academic background. You just need to kind of be fearless and really motivated to just learn, and you'll figure it out.
What would you say to people who might feel like this right now? This being, you know, maybe they fear they don't have the right level of AI fluency, or, you know, they just feel a bit intimidated by it all. What would you tell them?
I mean, I think I would acknowledge that it's real because that's the first step to overcoming it. Is you don't feel anxious because it's seems overwhelming. It is overwhelming. Like every single day, every single week, some new transformational technology comes online that has the potential to transform the way that we do things, but also maybe threaten like the future of the human race. It's like the environment around it is meant to be anxiety inducing. And so I think, you know, it's not out of the ordinary that you feel this way. But I think that the cure to that in some ways is not trying to feed into the, like, I need to respond to everything that happens. I don't need to be reactionary. Just be principled about the things that you do and how you can start to bring this technology or this understanding into things that make you, things that you're interested in. So if you're a product person or if you're a design person, what are the aspects of your work that you really love to do and you naturally gravitate towards, whether it's like writing product strategy or talking to customers? Start there and start to say, like, how can AI help me do this? Maybe 10, 20, 50% better. Don't worry about needing to transform everything that you do. Just start with the stuff you already love, you already like to do, you already know really well. And then the rest, I think, will come.
You mentioned anxiety, which I think is super interesting because I, for one, I think maybe, I want to say like 6 to 9 months ago, I would look at my like LinkedIn feed and I'd see like all of these demos like of AI stuff. And part of me would think, this is a bit scary because I just feel behind. Do you know what I mean? Like there's all this stuff happening and every day I'm on there and there's more stuff. And because the stuff is AI generated, there's even more stuff.
Yeah, and you're keeping all the tabs open of all the videos.
I'm saving all the LinkedIn posts. I'm not reading them.
Yeah, you're not reading them.
I'm
the
just
list
saving
is
them.
Growing. Yeah.
And I know, having spoken about this with a lot of people around me in the like product engineering design space, the anxiety is real.
Yeah.
What would you, or how would you recommend a product leader help create an environment where, it's welcoming of the anxiety of people on your team as product managers, for example? And like, what can a product leader do today to help raise the AI fluency in a team while acknowledging that, okay, this anxiety is like real, it can be validated, and then like, plot a course forward to raise the level of the team?
Well, I mean, I think leading in the age of AI, it's that old adage of like everything is different, but it's also still the same.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the things that we do in terms of the fundamentals as product tacticians or leaders remains the same in terms of understanding the market and our customers, helping unblock our team, helping to grow people. But it's like AI makes everything feel very intense or heightened because it's like all of a sudden we've got these new superpowers, but we still don't really quite know how to use it. So I like to think of it as like, when Peter Parker got bit by the spider, like all of a sudden he has all these new superpowers, but in that early stage, his hands keep getting stuck to things and like he doesn't know how to use his webbing. Yeah. And they're like, you have to defeat the Green Goblin, but he's like, I don't even know how to even make anything work. And so I feel like that's the stage that a lot of companies and a lot of teams and a lot of product leaders are at with AI. And I have a framework. I mean, I made it up, but I mean, people make up frameworks every day, so why not?
It's better than nothing, I'll tell you that.
And I think of it as like the 3 Ps of driving AI adoption. And the 3 Ps are people, process, and platform. And so the people is answering this question of who am I in this age of AI? What are my roles? What are my skills? What makes me special as a person? It's not just the functional description of what we put on, the job description. It's deeper than that. It's identity. Part of the reason that AI is causing all of this anxiety is because people don't yet understand who they'll be when perhaps AI starts to take over some of the things that they thought were special.
Yep.
And that's special about them. And that's especially true if you're leading in a high-performing environment where people tend to equate what they do with who they are. So you have this new technology.
I do that.
We all do it, right? Because it's deeply personal. We want to do our best work. And so when something comes in and sort of threatens that, it leads people to feel a lot of anxiety. The second is the process. So how does the work actually get done? How do we collaborate? Like, what are the quality standards? If AI helps me do something 50% better, 50% faster, but at 75% of the quality, is that okay? Like as a leader, you have to make all of that stuff explicit. And then platform is the last, and that's like, what are the tools I actually use? So what are the tools that the people embed in the process to get stuff done? And I find that most companies jump to platform because there's like so many new tools and workflows, and like you feel like you need to just like buy all the things and put it into your organization. But they're not yet addressing the process or, most importantly, the people. And as we know, if you've worked in any type of environment, people is the number one thing to address. And so then you have the anxiety and all of these.
It's also the least straightforward thing because, like, by nature, you're dealing with something that is, the human. Anything human is quite, how would I put this? It's there's no like sense of normalization because everybody comes in a different shape and form, and you have to deal with like personalities, and it's not easy.
And that's why it's easiest to focus on like, what's the tool?
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than, okay, so now the designer's feeling a little encroached upon by like the product person, or the process is not feelings, right? So we just jump to the tools and we don't think about like the people who are using them, and again how to address some of these deeper things around like your identity or anxiety, your role in the company, your role in the world as a result of this new technology.
I think you should write something about this 3P framework if you haven't done it yet.
Well, Axel, I'm working on something. So hopefully by the time this comes out, I'll have something to share.
I knew something was coming.
I didn't even tee him up to say that. You're so good.
This is great. When we had a chat about the show, you talked a little bit about something called the coordination tax.
Yes.
I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, it's connected to this idea that we were all seeing now, which is, of course, AI gives us new superpowers. So the way that product has usually been done is like this dream team of specialists who all come together to help build something. And so you've got designers and engineers and product folks and user researchers and data scientists, and they're all like amazing at their one domain. But part of the tax that you pay in terms of collaboration is through coordination. So it's keeping everyone on the same page through meetings and status updates. And it's not additive to the work, but it is a tax you've got to pay to get the work done. And now with AI giving us these new superpowers, now like the PM can be the designer, and the designer can be the engineer, and the engineer can be the user researcher, and the user researcher can be all of these things, right? And so it helps us eliminate some of the coordination tax because each person can do more. But then it also brings up these new questions of, like we were saying, anxiety, role, ownership, which I've seen as I've seen it myself firsthand. As I talked to a lot of my peers. It's kind of leading to some like negative anti-patterns too in organizations where people might be gatekeeping to sort of say, if I can create scarcity around the thing that I do, then I have to be in the room. People will have to include me.
This is super interesting because at the same, like I totally get the gatekeeping behavior because I've seen it firsthand as well. Part of me also thinks AI just helps democratize the superpowers. Do you know what I mean? Like, because we kind of, in this bubble we are all in, as in the product and tech bubble, we all have access to the same capabilities. I mean, as much as you're ready to pay for like a GPT subscription, even if you're in the free version. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
of course.
Like, it's interesting that still, like, the behavior of people would be, like, some people would be gatekeeping stuff, you know?
Well, I think that people, are going to bring their own mindset now to this new era. So the things, like the way that you approach things in the past, it's going to become heightened now in the future. And so if you are worried about what's my role on this team or this company, then you might think I need to be territorial in order to maintain it. So maybe you're the person who like learns a new tool, but you don't share it with people. You kind of like hoard it and say it's like, it's my workflow, it's my process.
I've got this demo flow that I will never share with you.
Right. And everyone's just like, how is Axel so productive all of a sudden? And you're like, I don't know. It's, I woke up like this. And that's a form of gatekeeping. Or even just saying, hey, I know you could get this work done using AI, but in order for it to, move to the next stage, you've got to include me in the decision. So trying to figure out how we reap the benefits of removing the coordination tax, but also still make people know how to work together and collaborate.
You could also choose to be like an ambassador or a teacher, like, like you learning for people who are in the companies in general who are more AI forward and are, experimenters and they're playing with a lot of these tools and finding actual high leverage ways that they can use these tools to, accelerate workflows and things like that. You could either just do it and then great, your output has been increased and maybe you keep the same quality bar, but isn't there a multiplier effect in just like teaching everybody, like recording yourself doing a demo and teaching everybody else? And is like, doesn't that contribute to you being more successful? Even like, I'm just talking from a pure, if I'm cynical, like even from a pure optics point of view in the company, like maybe your leadership teams look at you and goes, oh, this person is great because they've been sharing. And do you know what I mean?
Yes, I think 100%. I mean, I think part of it, I always go back to leadership because I think, if you're a great leader, if your team's not doing something or displaying behaviors, you have to ask yourself, have I set up the right environment for them to do it? And I think we would want teammates to be enablers, but perhaps the environment is still one of competition or one of gatekeeping.
Yep.
And so I actually think it's back on the product leader to say, or leader of any team to say, have you explicitly told your team that part of their job is to enable each other to do great work, regardless of who owned it in the past?
Right.
Just enable people to do great work because now all of us have these new superpowers. So I like to think of it as transforming people from gatekeepers to be architects. So I don't own user research. I architect like user research principles and standards so that everyone can do great user research regardless of who's doing it. As a product person, I don't own the product strategy necessarily. I might own like the principles and the inputs and codifying that in such a way so that anyone can create great product strategy and so on down the line. And I think if you actually made it an explicit like requirement or something that like is going to be
Like
measured
having a goal,
performance.
like a goal around it, yeah.
People will automatically now start to say, okay, hey, now this is important. This is how I should be engaging.
So people behave like they're incentivized.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah,
That kind of makes
all the
sense.
social science of it,
Yeah.
of it all.
Yeah. I like what you just mentioned around moving from being gatekeepers to architects.
Yeah.
How, like, very concretely, how do you think product leaders can do this in their organization? I know, like, there's nothing specific about this to product, and it's not exclusive to product, but if you think about your experience as a product leader, like, how would you, like, if you had to go through, like, a few bullet points or a few initial steps to kind of, like, set an environment up for this so people are successful, how would you go about it?
Well, I'm a really big believer in something I call context enablement, which is how do you capture the core knowledge about your product and the process of building your product? So that could be your product strategy, it could be who your customers are, and what segments and personas, your design principles and design system. How do you capture that and turn it into explicit context that AI tools can use to produce great high quality work? And so it's not just the AI tools, but the person using the AI tools can use them to produce great high quality work. And I think actually turning your eye towards saying, if we want everyone to have a superpower, we want to externalize sort of some of the implicit knowledge that's sitting in each person's head who's working in a silo right now. How can we externalize it and transform it into an actual, piece of information and knowledge repository that now any AI tool that anyone on the team uses can have access to that knowledge? So again, if I take the user research example, I'm not going to say I need to sit in the room and design every research study and write every single question. I'm going to say I'm going to design a context repository that's going to help you and the AI tools that you use understand how to choose the right design methodology, how to write great research questions, how to think about recruiting users and all of these things, so that when the PM and the engineer says, I want to use AI to help me with a user research task, I don't need to be in the room because I've already externalized the context for them.
I think that I'm drawing a parallel here where there's a lot of talk in the industry around your moat is really your data. Like, if you think about, like, all these tools are now becoming available to basically anyone.
Totally.
How do you differentiate? How do you build, like, a high value product and take it to market in this context? And it sounds like what you're saying about context is pretty much what people say about having great quality data. And now you're saying, let's make this data available internally for the rest of the organization. So the level and fidelity and quality of decision making could be way better using these tools and, like, basically produce high quality artifacts, but also outputs from all these workflows we're doing.
Exactly. And I think the bridge from data is that data by itself isn't necessarily context. Data can have, like, lots of stuff in it, and then the context might be left for someone else to infer.
Right.
And so the difference here between data and context is I'm explicitly saying, like, this is the way we build product at Atlassian. This is the way we approach design at, fill in the blank company. So the same way I would maybe explain to a new hire, because in some ways AI is like a brilliant but clueless new member of your team. So
until it has the context.
Until it has the context. So it needs the context just like everyone else to understand.
I love that
how
in
we
this
work
podcast
here.
you said AI is dumb.
Well, I mean, if it doesn't have the right context,
That's true.
what is it? It's using, whatever's in training data sets, some stuff it's scraped off the web, right? And it's inferring.
Yep.
And presumably your company is much more strategic than, some sort of generic statistical output. So how do you help AI actually understand that context so that it can, just like every single member of your team, know how to operate, even if it's not being supervised by, a specific expert when it's doing a task?
It's almost like this investment you make, and you're intentional about it, making this investment upfront, because you know the impact it will have on the quality of the stuff that comes out of the AI-powered workflow, right? Because
Totally, yeah.
I feel like it's the way I'm thinking also about this is, like, how in a lot of early-stage startups, people will build a lot of things. Like, there's a lot of quick and dirty solutions, and then the product gets traction. But nobody's cleaning up the code base. Do you know what I mean? And then people keep building on top of, like, a lot of quick and dirty solutions. And at some point you're like, okay, we need to, like, clean up this stuff, right? Similarly here, I think what I'm hearing from what you're saying is the earlier you invest in providing or setting the context for these AI tools and also for the rest of the company, then the better it will be, and almost like the value will compound in time, right?
Yeah, I think it works on two levels. One is, like you said, improving the output. So, AI is very smart, but it might not be aligned yet to your unique product context. So if you invest in actually documenting and institutionalizing this context, I've seen and will show that the output is better. And then I think the second piece of it is saying it's a signal to the rest of your organization that we want everyone to acquire new superpowers. We're actually not gatekeeping. Why? Because we are externalizing and saying this is how we do the things that we do that are special at our company. And anyone can take it and use it to do any task that they want at any period in time. So user research, you cannot gatekeep. Product, you cannot gatekeep. Design, you may not gatekeep. And not only may you not gatekeep in sort of principle, but I'm actually going to ask you to externalize the way that you work so that other people can pick that up really quickly and then, do the things that you do as well.
Thinking about like your career and how you've gone from these amazing companies to, founding Herd, like, would you have done anything differently in hindsight from a skills perspective? Even though, I feel like you had an edge already because like you came from Spotify and Netflix where AI was already a thing back then. Now looking back, would you have done anything differently? Might be like taking a course or I don't know.
It's so funny. I mean, I never worry about knowledge because knowledge even now is so much more straightforward to acquire. It's all about experience. And I would just go back and take so many more like shots on goal than I did, because just the experience of trying things and failing at things and building intuition around like how to solve problems and how to manage anxiety, how to manage conflict, like those were the things that taught me the most in life. And I think someone recently asked me like, oh, what should I do with like my kids in the age of AI? Like what should they be learning in school? And, I'm not a teacher, so I can't say here are the subjects to learn, but I would say just like help your children get as many shots on goal. Like if they got an idea for something they're really passionate about, like help them take a shot on goal and just like manifest it and bring it to life, because those are the things that I started to do a little bit later in my career. And once I really dove headfirst into it, I loved every aspect of it. And that's what eventually led me to entrepreneurship. But you can always take a course or learn something. And there are probably people who can like chart out all the skills that you need to learn. But I think the experience and building the intuition is the thing that I would always wish I got more of earlier on.
For people who are listening to this show, who are trying to be like, okay, Kene is an amazing guest on this podcast, but, like, sounds like a lot of fluff. Like, how do I make this real? There are two things. Like, what would you recommend people actually do off the back of listening to this podcast? And we'll go into the demo section in a second, but I'm just, like, trying to be, not devil's advocate, but if I'm, like, let's say I'm an AI skeptic and I'm listening to this show and I'm like, okay, she talks about a framework. She talks about context enablement. This sounds great intellectually, but how do I like materialize this in the world and make this work for my team who I'm trying to, like up level on AI or get them to experiment or, take shots?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that the great thing about context is you don't necessarily need to start going out and trying to buy all the tools or get all of your data. You just need to say, what are the core things that I do on my team, and do we have a way of doing them? And again, you can start with some of the things that you explain to new people when they join your company. Like, what's your new hire onboarding for a new like PM or designer? And then you can, of course, use AI, which we'll show in the demo, to then create just very simple versions of what I call a context library, which is just this sort of documented explanation of like, here's some aspect of our product, here's some aspect of our strategy, and just put it in a simple place where everyone has access to it, like a Google Drive folder or Notion or Confluence, whatever you use. And then you can actually see the before and after when you start doing tasks that previously you might have just gone to like a ChatGPT or a Claude and said, oh, help me brainstorm this, or help me analyze this, or write this user research. Try it with context and without context. And you can see just the transformation in one shot now that the AI actually understands like who your company is, what your strategy is, who your customers are, all of a sudden the output is so much more useful. So you don't need to go and try to like document everything that you do.
Yeah.
There's some core things about who you are, what your product is, the way that you approach it that you can start with and then continue to build that out as you see ROI from it.
I feel we really need whatever it is you're writing. We really need it like now. So
Working on it.
okay, this sounds like a great moment for us to dive into the demo. So let's do that.
Okay, sounds good.
Before we dive in, would you mind walking us through what are we going to look at today?
Great. So as we were saying earlier, we want AI to give us all superpowers. AI needs to have context to understand how to do great work for our product. And so I'm going to walk people through how to create what I call context libraries. So these are structured knowledge repositories that help to capture your unique product context so that AI can help your team do great work. And so it's not super flashy. We're not going to be like, generating brand new things from scratch, but it will help to align AI and I think help accelerate your team. So I'll show you some examples of what context libraries look like, how you can create it, and then I'll show some of the before and after for when you do have that context library enabled, what it helps your team achieve. Okay, cool. So I just want to start off again, just helping people understand what is a context library. And so it's all about transforming sort of this implicit knowledge of how your team works and how your team builds product into something explicit that's optimized for AI and the different tasks that you might do. And so for our hypothetical, imagine I'm a product lead at Spotify and I own the social features. And I want to enable anyone on my team or even anyone at the company to build great product, build great social features. So I get with my team leadership and I say, let's create these context libraries that help to sort of codify our approach and the right inputs that we use to build great social products at Spotify. And context libraries can be really simple. You can put them in the places that your team already works. So here I've just said, let's put our context libraries in a Google Drive folder. And I've just created some example context libraries. I mean, I don't work at Spotify anymore, so I do not pretend to have internal knowledge of how they're doing things. But just for the purpose of this demo, you can imagine I've created some libraries that help describe all the different social features on Spotify, how they work, their value propositions, their key capabilities, the personas or the segments that they try to design for when they're building social features, some description of the strategy in terms of principles, inputs, targets, metrics, and then some user research maybe to help people figure out how to do great user research, which can be different for the social team versus, a team I worked on in Spotify was their creator team, which is focused on a completely different side of the business. So the way that they do research with artists and labels is completely different from the way the social team does research with Spotify consumers, right? So we'll double click into one of these libraries just to show folks what the contents of it could look like.
Right.
And so this is a user research context library, and it has a comprehensive guide for creating effective user interview scripts that align with Spotify's research standards. And, what you put in this context library is going to depend on what you want to sort of advise AI to do and how to act. But you can see
like
here
guidelines, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can see here some of the things that we've outlined are, how to choose the right user research methodology given your goals. So what user interviews are good for versus what you might consider other types of interviews for. Different types of user interviews, and even one of the big things when you do user interviews, which is how to, actually structure your research objective, which a lot of people skip, but it's a really important sort of first principle to make sure that you're actually designing a study that's going to help you achieve your goal, right? So if I'm the user research leader on the Spotify social team, I've put together this document, which can include templates, it can include prompts, with the idea that people are going to be using AI to do user research tasks. So I want that AI to have the best knowledge and wisdom that I have. Similarly, on the strategy side, you might create a context library that captures sort of the core principles and frameworks, right? And again, it's not just sort of what are the features, but it's like, how do we actually think about what separates Spotify social versus other products in the market, the types of principles that we want to actually enact in our product? How do we think of that? So then when AI helps you, it's not just guessing or inferring, it's aligned with that product strategy. So you see here, if I'm the product lead, I might want to enumerate some pillars like identity expression over social networking, right? We're not just trying to build another social network. We're trying to help people express maybe their music tastes. Another pillar might be around social features that drive discovery, because the whole point of it is not to just be social for the point of being social. It's to help you find new music, or something like contextual sharing over broadcasting, right? And so at a high level, AI has no knowledge of this, but it actually matters once you get in the details of doing work, right?
Yep.
It needs to be aligned to what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish. And I think, in the spirit of trying to give AI context, you can also use AI to create the context library, of course. I think one of the things to consider is that you probably already have this information lying around somewhere, like in a product strategy doc or in some sort of like team best practices. And it's just a matter of kind of bringing the best of that information together, consolidating it, and then explicitly sort of formatting it specifically for AI to use as it does different tasks.
As you're saying this, I think of all of our customers who have their knowledge base in Confluence and all the work they've ever done in Jira. And just like, there's just so much richness of information in there that they could leverage to like build these context libraries.
Exactly. And again, the data that you have lying around is amazing and it's great. And it's not quite always the context that AI is going to need to know exactly how I should do it when I'm doing this task. So this is about transforming that data into something really simple, well formatted.
That it can ingest in the right way.
Fits within the context library.
Yeah.
It's not going to infer something from your docs. It's going to know explicitly
Yes.
how you want it to do things. And so you can take some of those docs and you can use a prompt. I tend to be a Claude girly if I'm doing any sort of like writing or
Big fan of
generation.
Claude.
Yeah. And so I've just come up with a prompt here. If I wanted to create the prompt for the social strategy library. And you can see it just sort of tells the AI that I'm trying to enable people to essentially write product strategy using AI. So can you help me create this context library that captures sort of our key inputs as far as strategy, principles, and best practices? And I've also given it a few topics that it might address. And so I can use a prompt like this, and then I can attach some of my existing product strategy docs. And then I say, let's go. And it'll, of course, start generating a number of things. And it's going to be a process, right? So AI is going to generate an artifact for you. And I always like to kind of start outside of the tool first to get some of the core thoughts down, and then see what the tool gives me, and then we'll put those together like in a Notion or a Confluence. But you can already see it's giving me some really helpful sort of ideas on what to think about in terms of core social strategy and beliefs, and it's even filled in a bunch of things that it's inferring about Spotify, which may or may not be correct, but at least it gets you a starting place.
Yep.
What sets Spotify apart from the marketplace, the strategic inputs that we use, like how to think about decision frameworks around social features. And also I love to include anti-patterns. Like sometimes it's more helpful to tell AI like what
you don't
not
want
to do, right? So give it some really good examples of things that you don't want it to do, right? And so you can imagine someone who, might be really fluent in product strategy, but maybe someone who is not super fluent in product strategy. Like maybe the CFO wants to, is inspired to come up with some Spotify social features. They don't need to feel gatekeeped or blocked. They could really just grab this context library and start brainstorming.
Democratizing and enabling everybody to just like run with it, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And now this context is externalized, you can start to see sort of the difference in output. And so I have a before and after for a couple of different tasks that people might do with AI. So again, let's stick with the example of maybe the CFO got inspired at 3 a.m. and he's like, I really think we need some.
Sounds very credible.
Hey, Spotify is big on innovation, so it can come from any place in the company. So maybe he comes into ChatGPT and he just puts this very basic prompt: help me brainstorm some new potential social features that would help meet user needs and improve Spotify strategic metrics. And remember, there's like no real context attached here. And so ChatGPT gets to brainstorming, And I mean, this is no shade to ChatGPT because it doesn't have context, so how is it supposed to know? But some of the features that it's brainstorming and coming up with are pretty misaligned to the strategy context that we came up with, right? So one of the pillars that we said is we don't want to make features that are just mimicking other social networks.
Right.
And so this first one, Group Story Playlists, it's a collaborative playlist that updates an Instagram story every single 24 hours. So I think that is pretty square, like against some of the principles that we have. Or even this next idea, which is now listening pings. So when a friend starts playing a song or album you've liked, you get a subtle notification to join in. I mean, could you imagine? You'd probably delete, delete
overwhelmed.
your Spotify, right?
Because we kind of all listen to the same thing.
Exactly, right? So, clearly these are great guesses in ChatGPT's mind of what could be fun for a Spotify social feature, but they're not aligned at all to the actual strategy for the company. And then, I tried it again. But here I attach some of the context libraries, and again, they're in a Google Drive folder, so you can even just have that Drive folder and attach it to ChatGPT. And I use a similar prompt, but I also tell the AI, hey, here's some context around our strategies, our principles. Can you use these as inputs to help brainstorm new ideas and align your ideas to these strategy? And immediately, first thing you see is that the AI is acknowledging the guardrail, so it understands what our strategy is, and it's going to try to come up with ideas and brainstorm features that are deeply aligned with those. And I don't know if any of these ideas are good or bad based off of what Spotify wants, but at least I can start to see that there's an explicit alignment where it's saying, here are ideas that are based off of your pillar around identity and expression, where we want opt-in and private by default social experiences. And then here are some ideas for features that might fit into that. Here are some ideas for features that really drive social power discovery, serendipity without status. And so this is just a very basic before and after, and you can already imagine, because ChatGPT has a ton of knowledge about Spotify, it's already able to fill in even in the no context. But imagine again if your company is not so widely represented on the internet, that delta between without context and then having context is going to be
100%
huge.
I think that also the interesting thing, if I look at how people behave generally when so there's always the promise of what AI will do for you, and people build this idea that a lot of the stuff is going to be one shot, and then they put their prompt in there, and then they're like, wait, what? Utter disappointment.
Yes.
So what you just showed, I think, is super interesting, because these documents, like you said, could be the context library itself could be generated with AI, but you're really investing in helping the AI refine the quality of what it's going to output. If you genuinely invest in building the context library, this is, and with I'm guessing you didn't spend a lot of time on, because this is a demo, right? But imagine if you're you're in a work setting, then you're incentivized to do a good job as well, right?
Yes.
So you build a context library, and I can only imagine, especially with models like GPT-5, what you'll be able to create when it comes to, a strategy document, or ideas for features for the roadmap this year, or what would an aspirational launch look like for this flagship feature, whatever it might be. The quality is maybe 10x, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting. It's you give this amount of investment, and it has this multiplier effect to what the AI will produce.
Yeah, and again, I say I love it because it's a low lift, and it is helping do something that we're already in practice of doing, which is as leaders, trying to make sure people have the right context, but then just saying, okay, now AI is a part of this equation, and I want to make sure AI has the right context. And I also just want to help people do better work, because one of the most annoying things you do when you're doing work with AI is copying and pasting all the context from all the different places and finding the thing. And
it's getting better now with memory, and when ChatGPT launch memory context across multiple conversations and projects.
Yes.
At first I was like, I don't know if this works. And now with GPT-5, actually prompted something this morning and realized it got something from another project, and it kind of filled in the blank, and I wasn't expecting it to, and it was well done.
Yes.
Subtle, and well done. And it's actually almost now creating this expectation, now that I've seen it work once, instantly, this is the new standard for me now. You know what I mean? It's like, now it needs to work all the time.
Yeah, you have this expectation. You're like, of course it's going to work. And then it's
exactly.
The other 99 times you might still have to get in there.
One thing I wanted to talk about is, this is great. I think you have a couple of more things you wanted to show us. This is really interesting. How much of this do you think is going to become standard operating practice in the craft of PM? The reason why I ask is, if you think about evals, for example, I didn't know about evals a year and a half ago. Now it's a thing, and it's becoming more and more of a thing, especially because as a product manager, you are expected to know how to build AI-powered features. Yes. It's going to become like a mainstream thing. So as you need to learn how to write evals as a skill, right? Yes. Have you heard anything about context libraries? Do you think this is going to become a thing people are expected to do? What's your thought around this?
Well, certainly I think, contextual engineering is the newest and hottest thing in AI. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And my thesis on it is that probably the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be infrastructure over intelligence. We're starting to see just the massive gains that we saw in the early days of AI kind of slow down, right? And it's not to say that models won't get more intelligent, but they might not increase intelligence at the pace we once saw. And so what do we need to do to kind of help models, help AI function within its set of current limitations? I think it's infrastructure. And I think it's things like context and enablement and context engineering that are going to enable AI to get better and better and better at the tasks that
probably explains why some of these data engineering companies are doing really well valuation-wise.
Certainly. I mean, I think you even look at some of the gains that we've seen in AI coding tools in the last year. A lot of it was contextual engineering. It was being able to get into your code base and figure out, how do I grab the right context and engineer the right context so that AI knows how to take operations within your code base. And so I think that the entire system, as long as we continue with using LLMs the way that they exist today, we're going to see a much bigger investment in context and getting more sophisticated in the way that we engineer context. And to me, this is the lowest level, very simple thing that an organization can do. It'll continue to get more sophisticated. Eventually you're going to be building agents that operationalize this context. So you don't need to have necessarily files, but you have these autonomous, agents that are taking
You're producing
actions.
new artifacts. The agents are collecting them and adding to their libraries.
Yes, and its entire standard operating process you've codified in a way, and you're continuing to update it. And everyone's somewhere different on the AI adoption curve, so you don't need to jump to agents.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, this is just write a couple of docs that help to standardize that context.
It's also good practice in forget about AI. It also sounds like something everyone should be doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Do you know?
So the interesting thing I think about the era we're going into is engineering teams have really worked in this way quite for as long as I've worked with engineering teams. They have a lot of these practices around making the implicit explicit in terms of just documentation and even how to do
ADRs.
Peer review. CI/CD. We have versioning history of everything. And I think it's a really big mental shift for product teams to work this way, because we're things are so complex and so messy, so we can't explain them. But it's no, now you are forced to explain them. And I think it's actually a really good exercise to sit down and say, what are our product principles? What do we think sets us apart from the market? Right. Because it can't be implicitly just known as part of our culture anymore. Here's this new, brilliant employee that's joining our team AI. It needs you to explicitly tell it what to do.
You had a few more things I think you wanted to show us.
Yes, I just wanted to show, outside of just text context libraries, what a design context library might look like, because of course everyone's really loving using all of these AI coding tools like Lovable and v0.dev to create prototypes. And there's also a way for design to set everyone up for success as they're doing these prototypes by helping to create a library that has all of the design system, the components, as well as the actual code that people can use in these prototyping tools. So we'll stick with the hypothetical that I'm the
Yes.
CFO. And so I've come up with a bunch of great ideas for how to improve Spotify social features. And now I want to start prototyping some things. So if I'm the design lead at Spotify social, what I've done is essentially created these context libraries that have all of the code that someone can just import into a v0.dev and start building without having to recreate any of these features
Right.
on their own. So most of these tools use like frameworks like Next.js and Tailwind. Like, they use a lot of the same sort of frameworks and languages in building. So I've just gone ahead and pre-created all of that so that my team can just grab it, import it into the tool, and they don't need to do anything to rebuild it or refine it themselves. So you can see some repos that I've created around different social features like collaborative playlists or blend or jam, and we'll take a look at jam because that's what we'll use for this demo. And so if I was a CFO, I could just come into this this GitHub. I'm
imagining the CFO has a GitHub account and now they log into
They better.
Yeah.
They should.
I know.
Everyone's a coder now. Okay.
Right.
So I'm gonna download
I love
the
this.
zip file. And
But this is the reality we live in now. CFOs are going to be in GitHub.
well, listen, I have heard of some companies where literally like the CEO is prototyping at midnight and then sending the product lead like, hey, here's my new idea for
Is
this.
this like a product manager's nightmare?
It is their nightmare. You imagine getting a ping at 6 a.m. from your
Oh,
CEO
gosh.
like, hey, I've developed a new product strategy.
Yeah.
But I won't speak to the process of if that's correct, but certainly I know people want to be enabled to do great work.
Brave new world out there.
So we've downloaded the zip file, and we're just going to go into V0, which is great because they allow you to start from a project. And we're just going to just upload what we just downloaded.
Yep.
And it'll ask you which files you want to choose. I'm just going to choose all of them. And then we're going to start creating the project. So it'll get working on the back end, hopefully. Here we go. So it might take a couple. Oh, look how fast it was. That's awesome. Okay. So essentially what it did was take that imported code and put it into the project. And what this is a representation of Spotify Jam.
Okay.
So Spotify Jam is a social feature where you can have like a live listening session with your friends. You can invite them. You guys can all listen to the same music. You guys can control sort of like the queue together. So you can see sort of like what are the upcoming tracks. And then you can also add songs that are recommended based off of like all of your tastes. And I have a little mobile viewer which allows us to see it, like what it looks like on mobile. So it's not like a faithful representation,
Yes.
but it's like pretty good. And certainly if I was a design lead at Spotify, I would spend more time. I would import the actual components. But I just created this on my own.
But this is like a great starting point for a conversation from this. Like, imagine like the CFO had this idea. I think what I find is quite impressive is you can now go from like in the previous world, the CFO would have this idea. Maybe 80% of chance the idea just dies with him because just the way the world is set up. You know what I mean? Like, how does he even externalize the idea?
Right.
And it also depends on the culture of the company and stuff like that. But now the starting point is this. Do you know what I mean? Like, he can actually
Yes.
bring something a designer would take as input or a product manager would take as input and have a conversation around something visual. I mean, visual collaboration is like the most powerful thing.
So
right?
powerful,
So this in itself, I know you mentioned like, it might not be the right design components, might not be this and that, but also everybody else knows this. Like,
Yeah.
It's the CFO showing us something.
Right,
So
exactly.
maybe it doesn't have all of that.
It doesn't have, and then the more you want it to be high fidelity, you can choose to make that investment. But I think the other thing that it enables is like anyone who's used these tools knows that it can take some time to actually get them to understand the way your product works, like what it looks like when you click here, what happens.
The interactions. And
Yes. And so it can be a little intimidating for people. And it also just takes time to do it.
Yeah.
And what I've done here, if I'm like the design lead or the design ops lead, is I've taken that all away. I've said, you don't need to spend, 30 minutes trying to get it just to understand the product. Just grab this from GitHub, upload it, and then you've got the majority of everything that you need already here, already in the prototype. And so now I can concentrate on adding my new idea. And let's say for the for this hypothetical, the CFO's like, one of the great things we want to do, which is super in line with our goals and the industry goals, is we want to encourage people to go to more live concerts and events. And so I think I can use this social feature as a way to do that. So when we're recommending songs, let's also recommend songs from artists who are going to be in town soon. And so then a whole group of friends can see that this artist is going to be in town, and then maybe they'll be able to coordinate
bringing
buying
people
tickets.
together.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he comes up with this quick prompt, and we'll enter it. And again, he didn't have to do anything in terms of finding the screenshots and uploading the screenshots and telling it, no, don't make it look like this, look like that. He just gave it his idea, and we're going to wait probably 30 more seconds, and hopefully it's going to come up with a new great feature where you can see songs from artists that are touring as a part of your Spotify jam, and then it'll connect you to just buy the tickets. And he's been enabled to now be a great designer, even though he's the CFO and it's not his day job.
I like how. So one of the things I have in mind, is kind of jumping to mind now, is in a lot of larger organizations there is this process called intake, where you a bunch of people from other departments. Colleagues are sending you, as the central product team, they're sending you requests of things they'd like to see being built because they might be in touch with the customer or they might need it internally. Before, they would just have to send you a written request of what this looks like. And these are not product people, by the way. So they will ask you for a feature. Nobody's talking in terms of problems.
Needs, no.
Needs. No, they're like, this button has to be blue and it has to be at the bottom right. I think what this can also enable in the larger organization is, again, the starting point for the conversation could be something a little bit more contextually aware. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Versus this blob of text that I'm only filling because the process requires me to fill it. And I'm telling you, this is what I need from you right now.
Yes, 100%. And I think that is, that's the promise of these technologies, like you were saying earlier, democratizing it. But even in the democratization, another I think byproduct might be that you just might be getting inundated with a bunch of stuff, and 70% of it might just be not junk or noise, but it might just take you even more time to kind of figure out what the there. To me, investing in this context, it's okay, the first shot, it's going to be 100% better. And that helps everybody. It helps the salesperson who's coming up with the product idea. Then it also helps you as a product person who's trying to hopefully make what their vision is a reality if it matches your customer needs. Okay, so it's created a few things: a third swipeable tab, updated navigation. So let's go back to our app and let's see what it did. So, okay, here's the first thing, which was already here, which is it's going to recommend songs based off of who's in the queue. Then it's going to recommend songs based off of what we liked. And then now it's also, now it's recommending songs based off of who is touring nearby, right? And again, it's so simple in terms of how to kind of put this into practice. But I think as people are actually doing the work, having some of these steps cut out for them, and instead just being able to start off with something that's contextually aware.
And I feel like the conversation we could have, if you are the CFO and I'm the product manager or the designer, the level of the conversation we could have is now better because I know what you mean.
You know exactly what you mean.
There's visual support. And we can talk about, it's not about the finer details. It's about intent, right?
Yes. And it's not about gatekeeping the CFO being you can't come up with social features. It's about saying, hey, maybe you've had some really great inspiration because you do think we should be doing it.
The best solutions do not come. Oftentimes, the best solutions do not come from product. They come from somewhere else.
Exactly. I mean, product is about I think shepherding the best opportunities, not coming up with the best opportunities. So again, if you're going from gatekeeper to architect, if you're moving from I create value by making resources scarce to I create value by enabling people to do great work, then you are not jealous or possessive over who comes up with the idea. In fact, you want more ideas to be come up with and to come to fruition from all different places in the company, because that's part of what you're trying to architect.
I love this. Thank you so much for this demo. That
Of course.
super helpful. And I can already see how, having the context libraries and, as an input for a lot of the AI models out there just makes the quality of what's being produced, more helpful for conversations we want to have in the organization. So thanks for that. Right. This is the lightning round question that I have for you today. The first one is, what would you advise a product manager to do to kind of stay sharp in this AI era? Like, what can somebody do as a habit every week? It could be learning something, could be, being exposed to something. And I want to be helpful here. Like, product managers already have a lot to do. So it doesn't need to, I'm always conscious, we're always asking people to do more. But what have you found could be a habit or a trick or something they can develop to stay ahead?
Yeah, it's a great question, and people are super anxiety just laden now. I would say make it a group thing. Like maybe you once a week have lunch with a couple of your friends who either work in your company or may not work in your company, and just say what did you guys learn or think was
the experimenters,
yeah. And so it's social. It doesn't feel like another obligation of another demo or thing you needed to learn, but you can get together with people and you can talk and you can actually hear in context rather than just another newsletter to follow. Go out and talk to folks and
in the real world.
Yeah, in the real world, and you'll probably learn something.
Okay, I love that. There is this BBC radio show that I love in Europe, and it's called Desert Island Discs. I don't know if you've ever heard about it.
No, I haven't.
It's basically the host asks the guests. The guests are usually super famous, like you, and they ask them if you were stranded on a desert island and you could only take 10 records with you, what would you bring? So mine are a little bit different. So bear with me. Imagine you are stranded on a desert island and you can bring one book. What book would you bring and why? And then the second question is, you can have an endless supply of only one dish to eat until the rest of time. What would that dish be and why?
Well, thank God you didn't say music, because I could never pick for my favorite children. That would be too hard.
I don't think the food one is an easy one either.
No, but music would have been agonizing.
You're right,
for me to do. Books. Can I bring two?
Okay.
Can I put one inside of it?
I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
Okay, so it would be books from my two favorite authors. The first would be 10th of December by George Saunders, and the second would be Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. Those are the two books
Why?
that I would bring. I just think they are two of the best American writers to ever exist. George Saunders captures human emotion in such a way that it's funny, but it's odd, and it's also shocking. And I just read his work and it moves me. I feel something. And I think he also has this dystopian kind of futuristic aspect to his work, where he puts you in kind of odd, bizarre places, but he connects it back to human emotions that have always been universal for all time. And so as our world just continues to change, I feel that his work helps me understand what's always been true about us. And then, Toni Morrison, just who better has captured sort of the Black experience in America and writes for that audience and just tells such beautiful stories. And she's my artistic hero. So those are the two books I would bring.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Tricky question now. What about the dish?
Oh my gosh, the dish. It's so hard because it's what are you going for? Nostalgia or comfort or nutrition?
It's not a trick. It's not a trick question, but people answer this question very differently. Some people look at it's very Cartesian, and they'll be like, yes, but I'm on a desert island. Which ingredients do I have? So let's just say you could like whatever you want, we'll just make it happen. That's the rule. Like you could ask for something you couldn't make on a desert island. We'll make it happen. Could be anything. Just like what comes to mind.
My husband is gonna listen to this and he's gonna be like, "You're so freaking basic." It would be like a salmon kale Caesar salad, and it's just like the right combination of like protein and vegetables, and it's like somewhat refreshing, but it also can feel a little hearty. And
Yeah. Tasty.
I don't know. I was gonna say mac and cheese because my dad makes amazing mac and cheese, but I can't eat that every single day for the rest of my life.
I mean, it's a desert island, you know.
That's
You can just
true.
do your thing.
I don't think my indigestion system would like that for very long.
I love that. Thank you so much. I thought it was really. I mean, there's no good answers, but like I'll take them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love having you on the show, Kene. Before I let you go, is there any like piece of advice you want to give anybody else out here who's just like listening to this show, thinking about the world that we live in with like everything AI is bringing about? Do you have a message for them?
I would say what I said earlier. Don't wait for an invitation to sit at the table. Just go and plop down. Don't wait for someone to invite you, because you just have just as much of a right to participate in the conversation as anyone else. And I think as things change and transform, I think it's also a call for us to go back to the things that have always been the same and like root in who we are and what we do and why we do it. Because that, as much as the context around us changes, that will always be the thing that remains true. So that would be my advice.
I love it. Where can people find you if they're listening to this show?
You can find me on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
Kene Anoliefo, and just hit me up, DM me, email me, kene@kene.ai. I'd love to talk about this stuff and would love to meet you all.
All right, brilliant. We'll share all of these details in the show notes. Thanks again so much for joining the show.
Thank
I
you for
had
having
the
me.
best time. And yeah, good luck with everything you're doing.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks so much.
If this episode helps you think differently about AI in your workflow, share it with a fellow product manager and leave a quick rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps. You'll also find the resources Kene mentioned along with full show notes at atlassian.com/Axel. That's AXEL.